Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nam Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Krishna Balesha, Bhaktivedanta Swami, Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Gauravam Cham. I'll just do these two translations again. The bee and the python are two excellent spiritual masters who give us exemplary instructions regarding how to be satisfied by collecting only a little and how to stay in one place and not move. From the bumblebee, I've learned to be unattached to accumulating money, for although money is as good as honey, anyone can kill its owner and take it away. Of course, there's something here which allows a living being to be satisfied with staying in one place and not hankering for something else and accepting what comes. So if my memory serves me right, the python, if it's not in this verse, then it's also referring to the avadut Brahmin, who at one time would just lie, and sometimes he'd be emaciated, and sometimes he'd be eating only dry leaves, and yet at other times he'd be very fat because people would give him sumptuous food, but he would only accept what came. Now, it's not that he was simply lay about, literally just lying there and doing nothing and depending on the good mercies of others, but he was absorbed in spiritual bliss. This is why he was able to be satisfied in that position. So such imitation would mean that we discard all clothing, grow our hair and toenails and fingernails, and we just lie in the bushes and hope that someone's going to come along and feed us. No, such person like that would be considered a madman, and would be a madman if they actually didn't have any spiritual adhikar or spiritual qualification. And similarly, to accept very little and not accumulate a bank balance. Accumulation of wealth means hoping for some security in the material world, having something to fall back on. And so devotees who are able to live simply, it means they're putting their trust in Krishna. And this means that even if you artificially accept that, you put yourself in a position where you have to depend on Krishna. Just like when you go out on Sankirtan, you may be not qualified as a Majjhima Adhikari, but as you go out there and you're doing the work of the Majjhima Adhikari, and you start to take shelter of the Lord, knowing that He is the cause, He is the doer, and we're simply the anga, we're the limb. And when we act as a via media and not get in the way, then very quickly we experience the position of Madhyam Adhikari. This is why being on books, sometimes it can be the greatest challenge and it can be the greatest nectar as well, because this situation where we have to take shelter of Krishna, even those who... See, Sankirtan is not simply just a matter of being a good salesperson, because there's many good saleswomen who have done great on Sankirtan, but they're nowhere to be seen for years. So even those, they have to take shelter in Krishna to be able to continue with it. And we have seen in the past that some devotees, they've been great, and at the end of the marathon, they've been hoisted up and carried above the heads of everybody. And then a few years later, they're never to be seen again, or they show up looking like, very much a shadow of their former glorious self. Now, that's not to say that being successful and winning a marathon, everybody that lives gets glorified at the marathon. It's like, okay, we won't be seeing them in a couple of years. That's not the case. But the point is, even if we have some material ability and successes there in devotional service, actually, everyone is doing Sankirtan as a success story. So, if you go out in Sankirtan and you try hard all day and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books, the word only should be taken away, because those people, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who got that books, that's a major event for them. They're not going back thinking, I wonder how many books that boy distributed today. They're thinking, I've got a book about Krishna consciousness. What is this? Or they've been thinking, I've been wanting a Bhagavad Gita for years, and Krishna's given them the bona fide Bhagavad Gita. So it could well be that they become a devotee. The fact that they're looking, and then Krishna's guiding them to meet a devotee, means that it's they're already a devotee. They're starting the path. Even Prabhupada, in the morning walk, someone would say hello to him. Prabhupada said his devotion service has begun, simply because they're friendly with the devotee. So that's why we also have to try to not induce people to be enemies of the devotees. Doesn't mean to say we accept everything that they say or do to us, but we also have to try to remember that there go I, but by the grace of God. We could have been in that position. They're suffering. Perhaps they're angry with us because there's something going on in their life. Then it may be that they're sooner along the path of frustration to turn to Krishna. We don't know. We've seen it in the past. People who have been upset with the devotees, finally they turn and they say, so what's it all about then? And then they become friends of the devotees. So we can be patient, especially when we're going. The devotees are like this python. They're going to the same streets every day. And they're accepting whatever comes in terms of score, Sanktan score. So just like the python, he doesn't make a big endeavor to go and catch a meal. It will come his way, he'll take it. But he'll endeavor when the opportunity's there. He won't think, I can't be bothered. I'm too detached to eat this mouse which is walking right in front of my nose. The detachment is from the result, but not from the endeavor. And Krishna says, in this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution. So it's the endeavor which is important. And through devotee association, we learn from each other how our endeavors can be improved, or how our endeavor can be channeled in a way which is more enthusing for us, and perhaps is going to be more beneficial for the fallen souls who were out there trying to help. So this term madhukari is mentioned here. So kari means to do, like karo, JJ karo. Sometimes you see the Indian families, when they bring the child into the temple, they say JJ karo, which means do JJ. So they teach the kid to do this little party trick with chanting on, clapping their hands and go JJ. But JJ who? It's just JJ. So karo means to do something. And so madhu kari means to act like the bee does. They take a little from this flower and that flower. Not just like totally rape the whole flower and it's knackered. And then the next day they'll go and finish another flower. And by the end of the week, all the flowers are dead. So this is a lesson for the whole of human society. There's this concern for sustainability, but it's not so hard to understand what is sustainable. Just stop taking more than you need. But they want to have an artificial lifestyle. Prabhupada calls it a puffed up lifestyle. So something which is puffed up, it's not natural. It's artificial. And so because the living entities are attached to a certain lifestyle, they have to have it at all costs. Therefore, rather than just go back to simple living, high thinking, living within your means, perhaps going back to horse and cart or bullock cart, then it all means they have to have cars to travel around at breakneck speed. But and of course, we said this before, it's like you go anywhere between two cities, and you stay on the centre of a motorway. You just observe, you see in a shower, thousands of cars. And then at 5 o'clock, the ones that went there, they're all going back the way and they're coming this way. So why don't they just swap jobs and stay there and cut down all this running around, spending hours? One of the most tedious parts of people's work is travel to work. I remember when I used to work, and I used to think I should get paid, an hour to get to work, an hour to come back. I should get paid for this. This is my time. But that's not how it works in the real world. You want to work, you show up at here. It doesn't matter to them where you live, how far you've got to travel to get there, what your expense is to get there. Even if you're making a loss every week, it doesn't matter. They're just paying you to be there to do that job. That's the real world. But because there isn't the community spirit and a concerted effort, and because the governments are afraid or they're motivated otherwise, then they won't make such plans to counter all this unnecessary time wasting on the motorways and so much taxpayers' money fixing the roads, and still the complaints are endless because they can never keep up with the amount of damage on the roads. So it becomes a very complicated situation. Simple living, high thinking. This is the motto. And the devotees would be happy to do that, just like during the pandemic. Although it was a difficult time for many people, for the devotees here at Krunabhavan, mostly they were quite satisfied simply to do some nice service and having kirtans, taking prasad. Like Prabhupada said, for us, we're satisfied living in a mud hut in India. And he certainly showed that. If you go to Mayapur, you see the grass hut that Prabhupada lived. It's got mud walls and a grass roof. And even though they were building big palatial constructions all around him, and he may have had his room in one of the buildings, but he preferred to live in the simple hut. And have you ever been in one of those situations? It's actually so sattvic. There's no buzzing of electricity. There's no whirring of fans going around. Using the natural resources, then people can be more satisfied. I remember as a kid, I don't know if you experienced it or if you've been experienced at any particular time, that when there was a power cut, everything goes very quiet. Just like now, we're sitting in the temple and we're hearing this PA system just buzzing. And if that's not buzzing, then the extractor fan's buzzing. And imperceptibly, there's so many other things like the lights we have, these LED lights, they're flickering so fast, it's not natural. This is actually causing so much strain on the body and the psyche of the living entities. And those fluorescent tube lights that used to be there, they weren't a constant light either, were just flickering all the time. And so this kind of unnatural situation. But when we used to have power cuts, everything went dark and you use a candle. There was no hum, no buzz, just natural candlelight. And even as a kid, I used to think, there was something very nice about that atmosphere. It used to be at Krunabhavan that in the winter, sometimes we would have power cuts because the overhead lines, when snow gets onto them, then it creates some problem that they can't function. And even sometimes we didn't have gas, no gas or electricity. It was because the gas couldn't get up to deliver. But I remember doing puja and everything went off. And although there was no real noise because it was in Vrinda Devi's room, I was doing puja for Giriraj and the Shalagrams and Vrinda Devi. And even though there's not really any noise around there, it's quite quiet, it just became really peaceful, even more so. So this is the results of the modern lifestyle, is that there are some benefits to be had, and as devotees we will use these modern conveniences in Krishna's service, but if they're not there, we're still serving Krishna. But if people become overly dependent on modern conveniences, then they don't know what to do. If there's a power cut, or if the washing machine doesn't work, or if the shower breaks for the devotees, shower breaks are different now. Breaks down, you get the clothes in a bucket and wash them. So many simple things. And as devotees who have done traveling Sankirtan, or who have visited India, or who just accept the principle of simple living, high thinking, then we find these things quite pleasant. But still really these things, because the convenience is helping us to focus on efforts in this lifetime to spread Krishna consciousness. Speaking of Swami Sundar and the Sutta the other day, and we're discussing about getting cows and bullocks specifically. And we have a cloud there as well. Just waiting on the bulls coming. But if we were to take the bullocks and even train them, take some time to take. And then, about a week later we arrive there. We wouldn't even get there because the bullocks wouldn't be conditioned to that. It takes some time, you have to train them into it. Just like us, if we say, okay, now go and run a 26-mile marathon. So, well, I'd have to work up to that. So anyway, even if we did have the bullocks, it wouldn't be practical in this day and age to go from Lesmahago to Glasgow or Edinburgh and get back in the same day in a bullock cart. And back in the day in India, maybe even still so, and even in the UK, when they used bullock carts, they didn't always just use horses, they used bullock carts. When people would do regular trips to the market, they maybe have to do a travel which is like a full day and a full night. And the bullock, knowing where it's going, the driver could just fall asleep and the bullock would get him there. You just drive through the night and get to the market in the morning. Sometimes this is what they would do. I remember hearing about that. They start off one day and then they get to the market for the next morning. And a much peaceful state of mind. And I think it was a Hoksha Prabhu who was recently saying that by the time you get, even if you were walking to the Holy Dam, then no, what was the thing again? There was a transporting to the Holy Dam in different modes and the time of the mind catching up with you. Okay, so just in case you didn't hear that, when you walk to the dam, the mind gets there 2 weeks before you get there. But when you fly to the dam, the mind gets there 2 weeks after you've come back. Of course, Prabhupada also says that if you travel on the speed of mind, immediately you're there. So for those who are walking to the Holy Dam, then their mind is thinking, this is where I'm going. And by the time they get there, there's so much purification, step by step, going to the Holy Dam, thinking of the Holy Dam. Just like our goal is of chanting Hare Krishna is to become unconditional devotees, unconditional servants and lovers of Krishna. And because that is the goal, we're chanting on the way there, then we're getting purified step by step, mantra by mantra, if we keep fixed on that goal. If we forget the goal, then the journey becomes tedious. But we keep our mind fixed on the goal, then the journey becomes filled with so much adventures. So when we have challenges, we can take it as an adventure or we can take it as a trip, depending on keeping our mind fixed on the goal. And they say that because when you fly to the Holy Dam, even physically your body is not quite the distance covered in such a short time, it's unnatural. So this thing called, what do you call it again? Jet lag. That's why going to the Holy Dam for a couple of days from the UK, it's not really worth it. You want to go there for 2 or 3 weeks. But of course, we can prepare ourselves for going to the Holy Dam, because the more we prepare ourselves, then when we do arrive there, we'll be in the right mood. We'll be in the proper mood. I remember Gauri, when he was Shivarama's personal servant, he went to the Holy Dam with Shivaram Swami. And as soon as they entered Vrindavan, although Maharaj has always been in a very, what do you say? He's always had very serious responsibilities, and he's seen as being a very serious devotee. As soon as he got to the Holy Dam, then he got out of the taxi and he just started rolling about. This Madhu Vat, which is meaning as good as honey, Madhu Vat, as good as honey, and in brackets, money is the honey. And there's a nice song by Mangalananda which says, if you ain't got the honey there in your money, there's something you ought to know. You can work hard all day, turn your time into pay, but you leave it behind when you go. So this is, and ask them, where did you get your words? Where did you get the ideas for your songs? And say, directly from Bhagavatam. So sometimes if you're familiar with his songs and you start reading the Bhagavatam, you see, this is just Bhagavatam spoken in song form, and it's expanded upon, just like the purports of Prabhupada's expansions. So money is the honey. For many people, if they're getting money, then they're inspired. They're thinking, this is great, I'm getting more money, life is working out. But then that accumulation of money, the bee may try to accumulate the honey, but someone comes along and takes it. They'll steal it. This word is mentioned here. Hari takes away. Just like Shamasundar was saying the other day in class, it was Hara takeaway. Like a fast food takeaway called Hara. It's quite interesting. But you see, sometimes these people, particularly in natural environments where hives are there, they're so violent the way they destroy the bees' nests just to get to the honey, and they wear all protection so they're not afraid. But the bees are working so hard to get all this, and then someone just violently comes and takes it away without any consideration for the bees. So this is what happens at the time of death. We spend all our time either individually or collectively gathering, accumulating, and then cruel death comes along and just rips it away from us, or rips us away from it. We see this in the third canto, from the movement of the living entities in the womb, describing what they go through in the womb, how they pray. They're in so much pain, the rising in and out of consciousness. And when they're conscious, they're praying to the Lord, let me not forget you in this lifetime. Let this be my last birth. And then when they come out the womb, they take birth. They're surrounded by loving relatives who are making them the center of attention, and then they forget Krishna. They forget their promise. I think there was it a drama or a lecture spoken about called The Promise, which is about the living entity within the womb. And then we come out and we become distracted. And what do we become distracted by? Yeah, and specifically two things. There's one verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhogeshwarya. Yeah, so Bhoga and Aishwarya, sense enjoyment and material opulence. Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam taya paritachetasam. Is it Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha krinandana? Is that right? I think that's the rest of it. Some don't navigate it. No. Anyway, the first part is that one who's not resolute in purpose, then their mind is distracted by Bhoga and Aishwarya. So as devotees cultivating this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, one should be careful not to become distracted and attached to Bhoga and Aishwarya. And we will find that by just serving Krishna, then we will be given some enjoyment and some opulence. And just like just now, the devotees who are at the temple, they're living in a big property. They're not living in a little council flat. And they've got nice facilities. And Prabhupada was also saying that to his disciples. They were living very comfortably, even though they're so renounced, even though sometimes they find themselves living very comfortably, and at other times they may be sleeping on the floor of some house they've never been in before as they're traveling and preaching. And they accept this because their focus is not distracted by either the opulence or by the lack of opulence. And this is the proof of determination, is that when are we going to remain ekeha, single-pointed, when the challenges are there? Or are we simply going to be a fair-weather friend of Krishna? When the going's good, we're happy, but when it's not, then we take shelter of something else. So in the purport here, Prabhupada says that when one accumulates money, they may be harassed by the government or by thieves or even killed by enemies. So this is what goes on. That when you get some money, the first thing is government want to take a chunk of it. And so they're afraid. Here it says there's no need to keep a big balance at hand, along with the fear that it may be plundered by the government or by thieves. So as soon as we get that, then there's a fear of it. But if you have nothing, then you have nothing to fear for losing, right? You have nothing to lose. So this is freedom. Freedom from attachment, fear, and anger is actually freedom. If we have attachment, then we're not free. If we have fear, we're not free. If we have anger, we're not free. Unless these things are utilized in Krishna's service, if the attachment, fear, and anger is simply centered around our own false sense of possession, then that is not benefiting us, it's not freeing us. But if we transfer, and Prabhupada said it's the nature of a living entity to be attached. So when people talk about becoming desireless, Prabhupada said it's not possible because it's part of the living entity's nature to have desire. But how do we desire? What do we do with that desire? So in the diseased condition, then the desire is I, me, and mine. But in the liberated condition, it's Krishna, the spiritual master, the devotees. So sometimes we may not even feel like that, but if we try to implant that in our mind and put the devotees first, put Krishna first, put the spiritual master first, then this I, me, and mine contamination becomes purified. And the same challenge will happen time and time again. And we can learn to practice time and time again. And even sometimes we might fail. We think, oh, I put myself forward there. I didn't listen to that person. And on second thoughts, what they were saying made sense, something like that. Or I just decided, I know there's only one bread roll left. I'm going to sneak up and get it before anyone else gets before lunch. So we may do these kind of things. We may put ourselves forward, but the real pleasure is to actually not put ourselves forward, but to act for the pleasure of devotees. But we talk about devotees, it doesn't mean to say that we serve just anybody and give everything up for anybody, because that has to be qualified too. We don't want to be serving a bad master. And we don't want to consider someone more elevated than they are. And sometimes we also have to teach, like junior devotees, lessons. And also, so sometimes we do these programs and the devotees are serving these people, and the real benefit is when they start serving the devotees and serving the mission. But to begin with, we're showing them the example of serving. But if they foolishly think the devotees are my unpaid servants, and this week's prasadam is not good enough, I'm going to make a complaint, then they're missing the point. Sometimes we experience that, where we become surrounded by freeloaders. And now that type of person, they are not going to make spiritual advancement very easily. They may benefit by getting prasadam, but if they are not careful, then they'll take the devotee association for granted and they'll lose that opportunity. So we have to develop this mood of service and humility, and not forgetting where we came from. We haven't come from a pious, auspicious Vaishnava upbringing, most of us. And then even if we did, we're in the material world, so we must have done something wrong, or we wouldn't be here. So just the other day, we were at Adikavi Prabhu's house, and the data installation was going on, and we were reading from Srila Prabhupada when he installed deities, Radha-Gokulananda, and he was saying to be careful, we're dealing with Krishna. Don't be puffed up. Remember, we're dealing with Krishna. So in this way, we have to keep on checking ourselves from taking devotee association for granted. In this way, we keep on cultivating that appreciation. And this way, we become attached to devotee association. Not simply we become attached to a particular location and lifestyle because we become habituated, but to get the essence of devotee association means to serve them and to serve along with them, and to cooperate so that we can serve together to make an offering. Just like sometimes devotees go in Sankirtan and they have their individual scores, but when devotees cooperate to have a combined score, then somehow that brings more meaning, because it means that every book you do, even though it may not be as many as you did the day before, but every book you do today is an addition to the combined offering to the spiritual master and to the deities. So the devotees are wise. They understand that you can't take anything with when you go. So we try to become attached to Krishna. So at the time of death, we're not lamenting, thinking, oh, I have to leave this behind. It took me so long to get to this stage, now I have to leave it. If we find ourselves becoming too attached or too overburdened by possessions, we have to think, okay, what's my escape plan here? But things which are to be used, tadiya, things which to be used in devotional service, then that's a foolish renunciation. So say, for example, Reina says, well, I'm too attached to this van that you've given me for my service, so I don't want to drive it any longer. I'll just get the bus in to town. then that kind of renunciation would be false renunciation. Just as much as renouncing an object and going to live in the forest or live in a cave, renouncing something that we didn't own in the first place, because isavashamidam savam yat kancha jagat yam jagat tena tyak tena bunjita ma karma magridaha kashasidanam. The Isavasyan principle is that the Lord is the controller and the owner of everything, and we accept that which is necessary for our quota. So, and we're in devotional service, something is given to us. Some temples have got more opulence than others, but the devotees accept what is available for them in their service. Sometimes they may be given certain facility, and other times they may not have, but we continue with the determination in service. And trying to always remember Krishna. Just like one devotee the other day was doing some service on the altar, and they were struggling with it, just wasn't coming together. And then they remembered this verse: when one who forgets Lord Chaitanya, everything's difficult, but when you remember Lord Chaitanya, everything becomes easy. So the devotee started to remember Lord Chaitanya, and immediately it started to fall into place. So this is good. When these experiences come, either to ourselves or to hear others experiencing that, then this is an impetus for us to practice that more and more. Always try to remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. This is the first principle of devotional service, first principle of Krishna consciousness. Okay, we'll just stop there. And anyone get any questions or comments? Yeah, and it does happen, because sometimes you may have more ability than someone else, but it's materialistic to compare ourselves to someone else. But one way is to remember that Krishna is ability, and Krishna can take that ability away anytime. And sometimes that's happened. There was, for example, there was one Mataji. She was very pretty, and she thought of herself as very pretty, and she actually fancied a sannyasi. And something happened. Her sari caught fire, and she got burnt, and her good looks were gone. And Krishna saved her pride, and she saved the sannyasi. And so sometimes it's better to, as I say, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Is that just to remember that Krishna has given me this ability, let me use it in Krishna's service without becoming proud. And whatever ability we have, it's kind of, if we want to compare ourselves to others, then compare ourselves to someone who's doing much more. Think, well, I think I'm a big shot, but Prabhupada, towards the end, he says my only fault was I could only think big. I couldn't think small. I mean, see, Prabhupada did think big. So that's one thing I've understood, is that we may be even attached to an ability, but we just remember that, so what happens if Krishna takes that away from you? Maybe you've got a great singing voice, and then something goes wrong with your throat, and then you're sounding like a frog. Or you somehow or another you just lose the ability. So it's quite possible that could happen. So just be grateful that Krishna has given us an ability, and if we're grateful for that, then we won't be puffed up. We'll see it's Krishna's mercy. Anyone would like to add anything to that from their experience? Okay. Any other question or comment? Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, ISKCON Guru ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Shikontai Mahaprasad ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Jai. Jai.